Hi, everybody, and welcome back to True Confessions of a PK. I'm Karina.
I'm Karla.
And this is Confession 6. I'm not the life of the party.
Yeah. So essentially, in this confession, this episode, we're going to be discussing how, personally, if you have ever experienced hanging out with us, all our siblings are different in personality-wise, right?
Yeah.
But I think that in reference to Karina and I, even though we are a little different, I can speak for myself. Let me just speak for myself.
Okay.
I'm very antisocial. I'm not the life of the party. Literally. I remember I went to Monterrey and I was invited to a friend's birthday party, and they literally recorded my face. And I was like this, like, the entire time. Like, it was bad. And if you can't see because you're listening, just imagine,
straight face.
Like a straight face, yeah. I was like, it wasn't that. I just rather be home than.
So you're a homebody.
I am. Or if I go out, I'd rather be by myself.
Okay.
So that's me personally. So, but I know that you're kind of, compared to me, you're more socialized in some areas. How would you describe your social life?
Very, I don't know if the word would be secluded.
What the heck?
Because I have two friends. And, two friends who, I'll talk to every day or I'll message every day, right? Or, in our case, send videos every day. And then every once in a while, we'll, actually put a question or, a comment or something and respond to each other. And, yeah, when they come into town, or when one of them comes into town, then we'll all get together, and go out to eat or something. And then that's it.
Because when you said secluded, I was like, what the heck? Because I feel like you go out more than I do.
But I meant secluded as in the friend group, the amount of people. We don't really let people into our friend group because
it's a close-knit friend group.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's why. That's what I meant by secluded.
Oh, okay. Okay. Because I was kind of confused. Because I was like, compared to me, you at least go out probably 5 times more than I do.
You don't really go out, Karla.
I don't. But that's part of what we're going to be discussing.
Yeah.
So I feel like when it comes to pastors' kids, because you grow up in this church environment, everything revolves around church. So your friends, they're usually church people.
Yeah.
If you're I want to have a sleepover, your parents are, well, in our case, maybe it's just a Hispanic thing, I don't know, but our parents are more we need to know them before you get to sleep over with them.
Yeah. And
so they would only allow us to sleep over at certain people's houses, and it was usually church people more than friends from school or something like that. But we've always had that. I feel like pastors' kids, it's they grow up in this church environment, so everything revolves around that. So friends from church, activities from church. You go to a camp during the summer. Oh, it's a youth camp. Or a kids camp, it's not Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. I don't know. Not that we would ever participate in those type of scouts, but
well, not now.
Yeah, but even back then, we weren't I don't know. We just grew up in that environment, and then unfortunately, it gets to a point where you become adults. So even the people that you grew up with at church, sometimes everybody takes their own place, to
their own path.
Yeah, their own path, to each their own. So some people remain in church, some people don't remain in church, and then it's just really difficult to say, hey, you want to hang out, because you don't really know the person anymore because time has gone by, you know?
And then the only thing you have in common
is the fact that you grew up at church together.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I feel like now we have gotten to that stage where it's like, what do I do with myself? You know, or maybe I'm speaking more for myself, but I'm not sure. But I've gotten to that stage where I'm just like,
what do I do?
What do I do? Yeah, I literally just had a mental breakdown yesterday. And I was like, you know, I don't have I started off with discussing about how I was stressing myself out because I'm going through grad school and how I chose this path to stress myself out, right? Because I want to be able to afford a good job or have a good job with good pay and good benefits, and so that I can be able to afford to have a good house for when I get married. But I can't get married because I don't have a boyfriend, and I don't have a boyfriend, and I don't even have friends. So it just progressed like that. You can just imagine my mental breakdown.
You made all these connections and created like this sad web of
my
loneliness.
Life. Yes. My current status of where I stand today in life.
Okay.
And so I just but I think it's just something that's been building up because it's not the first time where I just feel like I wish I had at least one friend. Like, I don't care to have multiple friends. Like, I've never really cared for that.
But one good one.
But at least one good one. And it's something that I have been praying, and I've been asking God, like, send me someone that's a decent friend, you know, because it's hard to come across those. But I've been praying for it, but I also want, like I mentioned, like, I'm not a very social person. So, like, for me, I'm finding out what I'm liking now, you know, like, I enjoy reading. And if you were to ask me, like, what would your perfect day look like, probably include, like, going to get coffee, probably go to Barnes and Nobles and buy a bunch of books, and then come home, and I wish I had a hammock so I can lay on it and just read. You know, I enjoy going to the movies, and I like going to, like, I like art. I never go to an art museum, but I like art, and I would love to go and walk around in museums.
Yeah.
I like history too, but I wouldn't like doing it with like a huge group of people. Mm-hmm. It would probably just be me and like 2 friends or something, but I don't have 2 friends. I'm at that stage where I'm like, I need to socialize so I can have friends.
Yeah.
But how do I socialize?
Yeah. I can't answer your question.
No, I know.
But that's because like, yes, I have my friends, right? But I got my friends through school. Like, I went through elementary school, and then you always look for a best friend, right? Because it's like, oh my God, we're going to be best friends. We're going to be best friends for life, right? So I went through elementary school, and I was like, oh, you're my best friend to this person. Middle school, it was like, oh, you're my best friend, someone else, right? Because you grow apart. And then I went to a different high school, and at first, like, literally, it was so nerve-wracking for me because I didn't know anybody. And so I remember the first day, I was going to lunch, and I didn't have anybody to eat lunch with. And I saw this girl who just, like, I don't know, her demeanor seemed kind of awkward. And so I was like, you know what, I'll just ask her if she wants to eat lunch with me. And so I was like, hey, do you have anybody to eat lunch with? And she was like, no. I was like, do you want to eat lunch with me? And she was like, yeah. And then this other girl tagged along also. And for me, like, that was nerve-wracking because it's like, I have to talk to this stranger. And then we ate lunch together. We continued to eat lunch together, like, every day after that. And then one of them, like, stopped coming to the table because she made her friends, right? So it's just me and this other girl. And at that point, like, it was further into the year, I started making my friends also. And, like, I would bring her with me. Because I'm not one of those people who are just like, okay, I made my friend, bye, you know, and then, like, leave them alone. Like, I wouldn't want that done to me, right? So I included her in everything. And then Valentine's Day at school happened, and I went to orchestra, and there was this whole situation that happened in the morning, and I needed someone to vent to. And so I sat down. There was this girl next to me, and I looked at her and I was like, she looks familiar. So I was like, hey, you go to you have like these classes, right? She was like, yeah. And so I started telling her everything that happened in the morning, just venting to her. And then we walked together to class, and now she's my best friend. And then the other girl moved, like, to Alaska or something.
You were able to build on your friendships. But, like, for example, in my case, I can only recount, like, 2 times where it was always, like, a group of 3, like, me and 2 other people. But it, like, in both cases, the best friend is the one that ended up moving outside of San Antonio, or, you know, and so it's like you lose contact over time, especially with me. It's because I think I'm just complicated and I need to fix that.
Well, it's because you don't text.
I don't text. I don't answer phones. I don't DM me. It'll take me a while to respond. But it's just like I'm not a techie person.
I don't think it has anything to do with
tech.
I
do, because I feel like if we lived back in the old days where you would write letters to your friends, I would probably be good at that.
I think you're just like romanticize this idea of an old style friendship. Because if we're honest, letters still exist. And if you wanted to, you would write a letter to your friend.
But isn't that like creepy?
No.
I think now it's like a murderistic type of thing.
I mean, I guess. But if they're your friend, then there shouldn't be judgment in how you're communicating with each other. As long as it's a positive way to communicate, I think it should be fine.
I guess. I just need one friend right now.
I think you're self-conscious, Karla.
But
that's okay. Everybody is.
I mean, when you go through, like, bullying and, like, things like that, you're bound to be like that. And not just like that, but also in church. Like, it's hard to come across good friendships from church. Yeah. And it's because, like, we've mentioned this several times before, like, when you're a pastor's kid and you try to become friends with someone, like, you try to open up to them, and then, you know, sometimes
it gets taken against you.
Yeah, it gets used against you. And then you realize, well, that's not what a friend does, you know? And so it's just difficult. And I guess I do struggle in putting my trust in people.
Yeah.
And being able to say, like, oh, I see you as a friend, because I tend to see more like people more as acquaintances.
Yeah.
And so I could start having like a friendship with you, but I'll cut it off once I feel like this could lead to a potential like backstabbing. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's like a trauma that as an adult I still have. And because of that, I tend to cut off friendships before I feel that the person could hurt me.
You cut it off before they can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which isn't good. And I as a person, like, now that I'm older, like, I realize that, and I'm like, I don't want that.
It's not healthy.
Yeah. But now how do I fix it? Because I literally cut everybody off.
Yeah. But it's because, like, that's where we always have to remember, like, people are always going to fail us. And even if they're, like, the best of friends, like, you're going to get angry. You're going to fight. They're going to do something to hurt you, or you might do something to hurt them. But, I mean, that's because you're a person. You're human.
Mm-hmm. And I think we should see, like, relationships kind of like our relationship with God.
Yeah.
So, like, when we have in our relationship with God, sometimes, you know, we have misunderstandings, or we have like miscommunication on our side. Obviously, we have times where we feel like God has let us down, or we feel like there isn't that trust in our relationship, you know? And we can apply that to all different sorts of relationships, right? We can apply it to friendships. We can apply it to serious relationships between partners, you know? But seeing that now that I'm older, that's when I start realizing, because I feel like when I was younger, I didn't mind being by myself. And I would always say, like, oh, I don't really need friends. As long as I have God, that's it. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, because I still stand by that. Like, as long as you have God, you have everything. But it does get to that point where you're just like, I do wish that I had someone that I could rely to, or really and say, hey, one day, do you just want to hang out? Or someone to reach out and say, hey, let's go watch this new movie that came out, because I know you like, I don't know, murder mysteries or rom-coms or whatever the heck, you know? And I do think that friendships in life are important. Just like to be able to socialize in life is important too. And so, but I do think that I'm partially the way I am because of how I grew up.
Yeah. Well, it also has to do with the fact that we were so caught up in church, right? In the way we would serve. And like you had mentioned in the last episode, you served in so many different areas of church that it was basically consuming your life, right? And obviously, like we mentioned, once again, like how we mentioned in the last episode, sometimes you need that moment to step down and receive, right? Instead of serving, right? And in our case, because we were so caught up in serving the church, like not just God, but the church and everybody, there wasn't a balance between church and like our life at church and our life outside of it. We didn't have that balance. So to learn how to balance it was difficult on its own. And then with COVID and everything, like we couldn't go out anymore. We couldn't, I don't know, like go to a restaurant and then meet someone new and be like, hi, like, I don't know, have conversations with them. And also, that's not our personality. We wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So all of that comes to play. Like there are huge factors in why we are the way we are.
And I think you also struggle as pastors' kids to make friends with like other kids your age, because you have to mature really fast because of the pressure and expectations that are placed upon you. So it's not like for example, you gave, or I don't know if you gave it about how you were playing around at church, and it was like, hey, you have to come over here and pray, you know, and you were just a little kid.
Yeah, I don't think we've shared that one.
Oh, okay. Well,
but yeah, this happened.
And so listening to that, I mean, that's an example of that, you know, like instead of being able to enjoy like your journey as a child, your childhood, you're forced to grow up quickly, because it's like, oh, you can't be messing around. You have to go and you have to lead the youth group, or you have to do this. And with that comes responsibility, and you have to be like that testimony. And it just starts putting this pressure on such a young person that you just have to develop faster in your mentality and the way you are. And I think that comes to play when it comes to having those friendships and being social in that aspect.
Yeah.
Because if I remember, like, I would be invited to birthday parties, and sometimes I would go. Other times I would be like, no, because it would be like at Chuck E. Cheese. I'm like, I don't want to go. Like, what the heck? You know, what, Chuck E. Cheese? But it was just because I was maturing faster than other kids. So I didn't see Chuck E. Cheese as like
The same.
like, oh, how exciting, I'm gonna be playing those little games. No, I was just like, I'm not gonna waste money on like this stuffed animal, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, it was just the way
Chuck E. Cheese.
it was the way I was reacting because I had to mature so quickly.
Yeah.
And I do think that comes to play now. As an adult, I can see it. Like, because of that, I am who I am today. And there are some good things. Like we mentioned, there's great things about being a pastor's kid, you know? For one, I do find myself I do recognize myself as a person who is mature. And not in a bad way. Like, I'm not to toot my own horn. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Okay. But
Why'd you get confused?
I got distracted. Sorry.
Okay. Do you want me to continue? Because I have a point that I can make to add on to yours.
Okay, sure.
There's also, or I don't know if it adds on to yours or it adds on to the one that I was making before.
We'll just give it.
It's also the idea of the fact that we're so caught up in church, right? We have that as a priority, and other people don't.
Yeah.
And so when it came to, hey, do you want to hang out? And these were just like acquaintances from school, you know, or somewhat friends. You're starting to become friends and things like that. I feel like some people took it as an excuse when you'd be like, oh, I have church, or I have a youth group this Saturday, or I have this, I have that, right? And some people were like, why are you always at church? Like, what does that have to do with you? You know, don't you just go on Sundays? And it's like, no, but because my dad's a pastor. And then it's like, oh, your dad's a pastor.
Yeah.
And one time I got asked, like, so are you going to end up like those girls from, it was that show, like, The Pastor's Kids.
Oh, that show was horrible.
Yeah, because it showed, like, the pastor parent, right? And then it shows, like, the most rebellious kid that they had or whatever. And it's, like, drugs, I don't know, parties, alcohol, all this stuff. And it's like, so you're going to end up like that? And I'm like, no. Like, why am I going to end up like that just because my dad's a pastor?
I remember when that show came out, I was, like, super interested in it because I was like, finally, like, this show's going to be good. Like, it's going to show, like, good points to being a pastor's kid or whatever.
I think it was a TLC show.
I don't know, but
So
I remember I watched
us.
like the first episode and I was like, what the heck is this? Like, this is trash, you know? And unfortunately, like, it didn't help in any aspect. And it just made pastors' kids seem like the stereotypical, like,
Hypocrite.
And like rebellious kid. I do think
it brought on a negative image.
Yeah. I do think that's something that I've noticed personally when it comes to pastors' kids, and is that in each family we can kind of see, like, when you have multiple kids in a pastor's family, you know, there's always that one kid that, because they grew up in such a strict environment of, like, church environment, when they get older and they get to that point in life where they're, like, on their own, they tend to be more adventurous, and not necessarily in a bad way, but they're more outgoing. They're more like, let's have a barbecue at my house or whatever, and they invite people. Like, they're more socialized because they didn't get to have that when they were younger. And then there's always the other siblings that homebodies that are more like, I just prefer to stay home by myself. Yeah. And we kind of see that within our own, like, in our sisters, you know, like, for example, you go out more than I do, but at the same time you're like, well, I don't go as much as Vanessa, or, you know, and then Kayla, well,
She's like you.
She's kind of like me, but I think Kayla's much cooler than me.
Aw.
I just think I'm a dork, and I think I just need to find people that are similar to me
That you can relate to.
Yeah, because I honestly do think that what you said was true. Like, I personally, like, people would always say, like, I remember I was invited to a friend's party multiple times, and every time I would cancel on them because of church. And I remember at one point she was like, "Hey, it's gonna be my 20th birthday party. I'm having like a dinner at the house. Like, you're invited." And I was like, "Oh yeah, like I'll be there. And then it was like last minute, the person who was gonna preach wasn't gonna be able to preach on Saturday for youth group, and it was just like, well, you're the youth leader, like
You have to
do it, yeah. And so I remember I had to counsel on her, and she's like, for a friend, you haven't come to any of my birthday parties since we started this friendship. And I felt really bad, and I just felt like, at first I was like, no, that can't be true, you know? But then I realized, yikes, true. It is true. And so that was the last time she invited me to her birthday.
Oh, that's rough.
But it's just like situations like that, and it is difficult because you look back and you're like, man, like, I messed up this friendship. It was me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was on your part.
Yeah. And you feel bad about it. But life goes on.
But I guess, like, it also has to do with how I said, like, we had that as a priority, and to other people, it wasn't a priority. Mm-hmm. They didn't grow up with their dad as a pastor. They didn't grow up having to go to church every day because your parents had meetings and you were little, like you couldn't stay home alone, or knowing like, oh, I have to serve in this on Sunday, so I can't stay out late Saturday night, or actually I don't have a ride for Friday, so I can't go where you guys are going. And it's also like, for example, me, I didn't get to have a sleepover at someone's house, like outside of church, until high school. And it was only one time. Right? And mom literally called. It was my best friend, right? And so I was like, Mom, like, it'll be easy because the next day we have senior pictures. Like, they live close to the school. Like, they can take me. And mom was like, I don't know. And my friend was like, yeah, like try to convince her, right? So I was like, and you know those memes where it's like, ask your mom, and it's like, wait, because my mom's not in a good mood right now. That's literally like how it went. And then mom was like, I have to speak to the mom. And so I was like, okay. And so I was like, like I kind of didn't want to, because it's like, hey, my mom wants to speak to your mom. And it's kind of like, I don't know, like, you see it like embarrassing, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like, my mom wants to speak to your mom. And she was like, okay, right? So mom spoke to her mom. And long story short, yes, right? So I went and I stayed over, and I felt terrible because I fell asleep and she was like talking to me. And then the next day, like, I woke up and she was like, do you go to sleep early? And I was like, why? And it's,
but you do go to sleep early.
Well, yeah, I go to sleep early, but I'm also not used to like staying up late, hanging out with people, because I didn't have that, you know?
I also think like when we would have sleepovers at church for like with church people, in this point of view, anyways, in my experience, I stopped liking sleepovers at church people's houses, because I feel like it would come to a point where it was just like they were just trying to dig for information about your family.
Oh,
that was my experience.
Like, they would ask questions.
Yeah, and it wasn't like good things, like they wanted to know like all the like the
negative
negative stuff. Yeah. But I'm not a fan of sleepovers, not just for that, but because of other criminal justice stuff. Okay. Anyways, but something that I am grateful for growing up at church is the friendships that we created with other pastors' kids.
Yeah.
Yes. Because of our church, we were able to meet other families that like other pastoral families, and we were able to meet their like kids. And I know for a fact we're really close friends with this other family that we when as soon as we met them, we were like, oh my gosh, just like
we
looking
were all
at
so
ourselves.
similar.
Yeah. And we're like, oh my gosh. And afterwards, we come home and we're like telling our parents, like, oh, we had an amazing time because they're just like us.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like they're very similar to us. They experience similar things to us. So they know like what we're going through or what we have gone through, you know, and there's no judgment, you know, and that's something that I'm very grateful for because those are still people that I can say, like, if ever they need something, like, I'd be willing to help them. And I know for a fact they'd be willing to reach out and help us, you know? Those are the friendships that I do think that
are worth it.
Are worth it and are a blessing. Mm-hmm. And that's just something I wanted to point that out because I know we've been talking about some like negative stuff.
Yeah.
You know, there are some good stuff to it, and obviously, like you are raised, growing up at church, you're raised in God's path. But not only that, you get to understand and be able to discern what is coming from God and what isn't.
Yeah.
And that is the important part because then you're just blindly walking into church believing everybody who tells you something. And then it's just like, that's not true, you know? That's an important aspect to it. But sorry, guys, if you guys hear noise in the background, it's our dog. But yeah, essentially, that was the point of this episode.
Yeah.
And
wait. I want to say something I'm grateful for.
Sorry.
It's because you said, like, I'm grateful for this. But,
yeah, but it's not Thanksgiving.
No, I know. But how do you?
Go, Karina.
Do you see how she treats me?
It's because I'm having, like, a nostalgia of, like, that's what my mom does. Like, everybody's sharing what you're grateful for.
You're mean.
Okay, go.
Anyway.
Karina, what are you grateful for?
Anyway. You stress me out.
Okay. Better not be something. Okay,
no. But anyway, like as pastors' kids, right? We learned how to keep our relationship with God a priority in life. We learned how to rely on God, and I feel like because of that, we didn't have really low lows in our lives, you know, like highs and lows. So like they weren't as
well. At one point, I felt like I was dragging on the ground.
Yeah, but I'm saying like as we started growing, you know, obviously some of these things happened when we were younger. Right, but once we were older, I feel like we didn't have as low lows as we would have if we didn't know God, and if we didn't know how to keep God as a priority.
Yeah. So what you're trying to say is that because we had a life with God, we have experienced really low situations. But we were able to get back up from it instead of letting that drag us deeper into the ground. Okay. Yeah. Because when you're... Yeah.
That, and I feel like we've also built, like, a really great connection with God.
We have a firm foundation.
Yes. Each of us as individuals and as a family, I feel like we have like a really firm foundation, but like great relationships with God. You're mean. It's because you threw me off.
Blame it on me.
Well, God.
Essentially, guys.
I don't want to talk to you anymore. Okay, guys, thank you. Thank you. I'm not yelling at you. Stop.
Are you gonna cry? Okay, essentially, guys, this was...
Thank you guys for listening to today's episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us. True Confessions PK or true.confessionspk@gmail.com.
Essentially, guys, that was the point of this episode. We wanted to be able to share something more personal from us with you guys. And we hope that you guys were able to relate to it. And if you weren't, then we just hope that you enjoyed this episode. And guys, make sure to follow us on our socials.
Said that.
Yeah, with anger. Do it with love. Go.
Make sure to follow us at true.confessionspk. I know, that's the Gmail. At True Confessions PK on Instagram and TikTok. Yes, on Instagram and TikTok, and then at the Gmail.
And if you need prayer, reach out to us, guys, and make sure you send us prayer requests.
Yes.
Or if you just want to send us like something,
your own stories.
Yeah, and if you feel like you want to give us a future topic or something that you want us to discuss or touch point on, just make sure you send us that information as well. We hope that you continue enjoying our podcast and listening and watching on YouTube. Okay. Bye, guys. Have a good day.
Bye.